back. All right, 8.2, we analyze performance measures. What's the purpose? Purpose of analyze performance measures is to provide insights into the performance of a solution in relation to the value it brings. It's kind of simple, right? Because we're analyzing the performance measurements that we actually like. So one chapter we decide on something, and the other chapter we analyze it. The chapter after that is assess the analysis. We kind of do that with every single thing we move forward with, right? But it's fine. The description, the measures collected, and the task measure solution performance, basically earlier, is often what's going on here? Never mind. Is often that doesn't work. Okay, is often requirement often requires interpretation and synthesis to derive meaning and to be actionable. Performance measures themselves rarely trigger a decision about the value of a solution, which means they rarely trigger a decision about the value of the solution. Huh? Why? Uh, I mean, like we get to decide whether the data is positive or negative, right? So the measurement itself doesn't really like trigger. It's how we assess it and synthesize it, and how we connect it to the direction that we're going. That's true. Okay. In order to mean, it's funny because like this is kind of like a detail that we assume, right? Do we? I think the beauty of business analysis is that it kind of like deconstructs your thought process to the mundane tasks that you normally kind of like do naturally, because that's where it questions like your own logic, your own reasonable approach, and it kind of questions how you move forward and how you interact with the world, and it allows you to kind of like be more efficient and effective, I guess. Maybe. I'm not gonna say efficient. I'm not gonna say. Yeah, some we might tend to develop overthinking habits, maybe, or but that also could become a skill in the future, because ultimately, like, if you talk to a software engineer that's been software engineering for the past 15 years, if you're talking to them about a project or something, they have the ability to kind of like deconstruct the whole thing in their head and kind of like go, fuck yeah. And while other people would take years and months in order to kind of like plan and process. I don't know. Anyways, in order to meaningfully analyze performance measures, business analysts require a thorough understanding of the potential value the stakeholders like. Again, like, know what do we want to do, why do we want to do it, what does the solution give us, to assist in the analysis variables such as the goals and objectives of the enterprise, key performance indicators, KPIs, the level of risk of the solution. It's literally all the information that we have. We kind of have to go back to it. What are the inputs? A potential value, because it describes the value that may be realized, and the solution performance measured, as in like what are we weighing these values for, right? Like, I don't know, a new machine gives us like 5 extra hours of production every day, but 5 extra hours of producing what? We only have to produce X amount per month. So a new machine does give us value because it saves us time and allows us to produce more, but our sales in general do not need a new machine, right? Like that's where you kind of like, that's where your intuition and your decision-making processes enter. So ultimately, our input is potential value and solution measures. We analyze the performance measures. Our output is the solution performance analysis. And the tasks that use this are the assessment of solution limitations and the assessment of enterprise limitations. What are the elements? Solution performance versus desired value. That's basically where you kind of like go the back and forth. We examine the measures previously collected in order to assess the ability that helps stakeholders understand the solution value. The solution might be high performing, such as an efficient online transaction processing system, but contributes lower value than expected, or compared to what it had contributed in the past. True, because we're all ultimately what we're doing is we're checking versus what has happened, what we expect to happen, and what we're doing will change what's happening and how that makes a difference. Either collect more measurements or treat the lack of measures as a solution risk. There are also risks that we have to think about because basically, when we're measuring something, we need to uncover like things that are inefficient and ineffective, the risks to solution performance, and whatever like the solution brings about with it as a change, because a lot of people might be resistant to it. Trends. When analyzing performance data, business analysts consider the time period when the data was collected to guard against anomalies and skewed trends. A large enough sample size over a sufficient time period will provide an accurate depiction of solution performance on which to make decisions and guard against false signals brought about by incomplete data. Okay, when analyzing performance data, business analysts consider the time period when the data was collected to guard against anomalies. So basically, seasonal. Maybe there are like certain, for example, production trends that that might fuck with your data, because ultimately we we operate in a world that's moody, and we kind of like operate based on events. Like the simplest thing I'm thinking about is the seasons, right? Like spring, summer, and whatever it is. And if you're looking at a factory, for example, that produces cloth, uh, I can only assume that the cloth that we produce for summer season is lighter than the cloth for winter season, but that probably means the cloth for summer season is more delicate than this cloth for winter season. So these things kind of like are trends in how production happens and works. Maybe these kinds of approaches allow you to see where things could go off, or where data kind of collects a certain kind of way. I don't know. Noticeable increases in errors at certain times and change in processes, right? There's also accuracy, performance variances, the difference between expected and actual performance. Yeah, we're still analyzing the performance measures, right? Because we're taking the measures of the performance and we're analyzing what they mean. And at one point, we decided on the measurements themselves. So we're deciding on the measurements and we're seeing whether they're relevant or not. The change strategy that was used or is in use to implement the potential value, the future state description, risk analysis results, and the solution scopes. These are the tools that we have to work with. Well, the guidelines, I guess. And the techniques, acceptance and evaluation criteria, benchmarking and market analysis, data mining, interviews, metrics and key performance KPIs, observation, risk analysis, root cause analysis, and survey questionnaires. Who are our stakeholders? Domain subject matter expert, project management, and sponsors. And what are our outputs? Solution performance analysis. Now we actually know if the solution is performing or not. I have no idea, but let's do this.